Hello, Mum.
Hello, Pearl.
Hi. So I wanted to ask you some questions about using technology in your classroom.
Yes.
I just wanted to start with getting a quick understanding of your teaching background. What do you teach? How long have you been teaching?
Well, I've been teaching 25 years. I started teaching in adult education. I started teaching fitness training. But because I work for an adult education organisation, our teaching had to be structured teaching. I wasn't to just go and do a fitness training class. I had to plan it right from the early years. I mean, initially when I did start my teacher training, it was simple planning. I used to plan 4-week induction programs for the gym. But as the years went on and more research into teaching was discovered, teaching and learning, that's when lesson planning came in, and there was increasingly more paperwork per student and per course to fill in. So that's what I've noticed over the 25 years.
So, yeah.
Gone from, turning up and teaching your stuff to actually looking at who's in the group, how you can, modern teaching is all about differentiation. So it's been a slow process over the years.
I see. So,
Yeah.
so it started off.
So it started off in adult education, then went to university level and taught at university, which is a completely different teaching environment. Whereas the adult education, the adults came for pleasure, and it didn't matter if they missed any of the classes. At university, it was a completely different learning environment. They were coming to learn for a degree. The teaching and learning was far more in depth. There was research involved. I had to write coursework, write exam papers, and because I had leadership roles, I was responsible for collating all the results, all the exam results, and any disciplinary procedures. So it was far more in depth there. And then I have experience of the further education system, which is again a completely different entity from higher education. In further education groups that I taught, even though they were mostly adults, the learners that I had taught appeared to me to want spoon feeding, because at university you just turn up, you give a lecture, the students are responsible for their own learning, taking their own notes and going away and doing what they need to do. But I found in further education that it was like they were still tugging at mummy's apron strings. They didn't, and they weren't encouraged to really go and learn anything for themselves. They just expected, and this is my experience, they expected to be spoon-fed all of the information that they needed. So 3 very different environments.
Okay, yeah. Three different environments, 3 different experiences. It seems that one thing you highlighted was perhaps at the beginning a more teacher-centered approach, transition to a more student-centered approach. I think that's what I picked up on.
That is completely true. In my early years of teaching, it was completely teacher-centred, right through to at university. And only in the last, say, maybe 7 years of my teaching experience have I noticed a complete shift from teacher-centred to student-centred. And in fact, we're not allowed to call them students anymore. We're told they're not students, they're learners. And I've had experience of, in the past where students are caught plagiarising. So you go through the procedure, the set procedure to discipline the student. But now it's all, if there is a case for plagiarism, it's all the students. No, it's all centred around the student, and you have to be mindful of upsetting the student, and it's all student centred.
So 2 questions. What's the difference between a student and a learner, and how do you feel about the classroom being more student-centred?
Well, the difference between a student and a learner, to me, they're the same thing. To me, there'll always be a student who is learning, and I feel that we're all students when we go on a course because we're learning. So I think they're one in the same, and I don't think that teachers should be penalised for calling students because they're one in the same thing. And does it really matter what they're called? They've come along to get something from you that you have, and you want to give it to them, which is your knowledge, your experience to help them through their course. But much has been said and written about this word. And also, in my last role, we were told that they weren't students, they weren't learners, they were customers. So they turned into now customers. And I'm like, a customer? No, I certainly don't get their customers.
Actually, I don't know. I just because for my course, I'm now I remember I just wrote something about providing products and services. Even though I didn't use the word customer, but I think I was close to it. I'm going to have to check what I actually wrote. So I did see that, or I did make that comparison just the other day. But anyway, I'm going to think about that later. But what do you think about the classroom becoming more student-centred? Is it a good or bad thing?
There are pros and cons, because if we do have good and bad teachers. So, for example, there are teachers out there who just want to get the lesson done with as quickly as possible, and just give the students the bare minimum and don't actually give them the full learning experience. So in this respect, student-centred learning and focusing on, well, have you made sure that all of the students have learned what you set out to teach them? So from that perspective, student learning is good. But I've also had a bad experience of student-centred learning in that students have questioned my authority, bearing in mind that I have extensive knowledge and experience, and students who have no knowledge and experience have challenged my knowledge and experience and authority to be incorrect, challenged me and accused me of picking on them when I have highlighted plagiarism, when it's a criminal offence to plagiarise, and when I'm only just doing my job. I have been criticised by students. I've had students report me to all sorts of people higher above me for what I consider to be just doing my job, and I take pride in my work. I've been accused of all sorts of things, and I've had even parents come complaining about, some fun activity that we were doing in the class. For example, as you know, I used to be a fitness trainer, so I had a group of students that were always coming in late. So as a fun way of highlighting the fact that they come in late, I said all those who come in late, however minutes late they are, they have to do those amount of repetitions in press-ups. Now, these are not full press-ups on the floor. These are sitting down on the desk, leaning forward like this, or standing up against the wall, leaning against the wall. It was designed to be a fun activity. They all agreed that they were going to do it. And then I had one student complain to her mother, whose mother then wrote a really derogatory email about me forcing her child to do military press-ups in the classroom.
I see. So I'm hoping that over the 25-year teaching period, this is more of an isolated incident than the norm.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So
okay.
When you said about the shift between teacher-centred and student-centred, so that's just the worst part of student-centred.
I see. And so, you did fitness training early on. In higher and further education, what were you teaching? What did you teach?
Oh, there I specialised in the exercise prescription for disease prevention, management and rehabilitation, because by that time I'd taken my fitness training to a much deeper level. I'd studied at master's degree level by this time, and it was a new subject area, and it was one that was seen by the university that was very much needed to be integrated into the nursing curriculum at the time, which is what I did. And then when I established that, I went on to specialise in the psychosocial aspects of healthcare, and lectured in health psychology and complementary therapies. And also, because of my fitness background, I trained in helping the student nurses to move and handle their patients, which involved back care and looking after their back. So I developed the exercise prescription program for them, Look After Your Back.
Okay, great. So is that like occupational therapy? Is that what it's called?
It's not. It could be seen as occupational therapy, but what it was that there were so many. The statistics for nurses injuring their backs are so great, and usually the NHS is reactive. So they wait until a nurse has damaged their back, then they start sending them to physiotherapy. So my research was around preventative measures. So that's why I developed the Look After Your Back exercise program to teach, and I integrated it into my manual handling curriculum so that they all did it as part of their training.
Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to the point of this discussion. Thinking about technologies and new technologies being introduced into the classroom. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, What was the basic things, and how did it begin in terms of like computer use and so on?
Yeah, well, that's been interesting, the use of computers, because when I first started teaching, and even at at the university, you're teaching a group was the old microfiche, whatever it is, the plastic thing on a projector, and you write on the plastic and the students could see it, and that was what it was for years. And then when computers came in, it was a bit of a shock to the system. I was actually at university when computers came in, and none of my lecturers actually used a computer, although the students were expected to do all of their coursework electronically. And it was at a time when handheld written work was frowned upon, because lecturers at my university was saying they couldn't read the students' writing, so there was a push for students to learn computers. And then shortly after that, when I got into teaching, I had to, really learn how to do PowerPoint presentations, and use the computer a lot. So, went from handwriting to word processed.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, is that as a teacher or as a student?
Both, because I was actually doing both. I was actually teaching part-time whilst I was at university. And whilst I was at university, I had this dual role of I was a student at university and I was a lecturer. Well, my job title was part-time lecturer, or tutor, as they would call it in adult education now.
Okay. And what kind of support was there for these new technologies? Did you teach yourself? Was there training?
There wasn't training. There was training telling us what we had to produce, but there wasn't training showing us how to do it. So I taught myself how to use the computer when I was at university, and this was between 91 and 1994, when computers just came out, and it was really difficult because it was a completely new entity, this computer thing. So I remember going to Tottenham Court Road with Valletta's brother to help me buy a computer, and I trusted his judgment on which one to buy, and just got on it and just had a go. Learned which buttons to press for the word processing. Didn't really go on the internet as such. I just learned how to get into the university's library system to access my journal articles for my writing, for my coursework and exams. And in those days we had relied on a lot of textbooks as well. I suppose they still do rely on textbooks, but I just taught myself a lot of screaming and swearing how to use a computer.
So what was the key driver or drivers behind you adopting new technologies? Would you say it was a personal decision, or would you say that you were just following what everybody else was doing at the time? Or?
I saw it very much as following what everybody else was doing, and the fact that it was much, much quicker to type. And because I had previously been a secretary and I had learnt to touch type years prior. I had those skills anyway, and I just found it was so much easier to type everything and see it on the screen and correct it in front of you, delete it all and start again, rather than write out on a piece of paper, which we used to do. It was much, much quicker. So I just said to myself, the sooner I learn how to use this thing, the easier it's going to become for me.
Okay, so a big time saver.
Yeah.
And my last question then is just about the impact to date of using technology as a teacher. How has it changed your role? Has it added value?
Well, this is, it's not one single answer to this, because I would say there's a lot of contributory factors going on here. It's changed my role in positive and negative ways. Positively, in that using the computer has enabled you to keep accurate records, because everything is recorded, whereas before papers would go missing, this would go missing, that would go missing.
Yeah.
You know, where is it? Yeah. But everything that's on the computer now is recorded and is there. So you've got the evidence. And over the years, the use of the computer and what the packages can do has also evolved, and they can, as the computer can do more things and it appears on the surface, wow, that's fantastic, they need a human to implement all of these new and wonderful things. And some lecturers will tell you that it's taken them away from their family, from their friends, from actually teaching, because everything, my last job that I had teaching a few months back, everything had to go on the computer system. And that everything, as in every time you had a conversation with a student, you had to record it. You know, so this meant that although I was just working a few hours part-time, I was spending far more of my own hours implementing all of their rules around keeping all students, all learners had to have their own individual learning plan, and it all has to be computerized. You had to have special training to do it because it was complicated, the system was complicated, and navigating the way around the system was too complicated. So I think, you know, on the surface, the use of IT in teaching is great, especially when you talk about using like webinars, using, you know, the latest PowerPoint for teaching, using YouTube clips for teaching. I mean, all of that is absolutely fantastic, but I think technology and the use of technology has run away with itself, in that they now expect far too much of a human being. Yeah, there's far too less one-to-one interaction with the students now. It's all about on the computer, this package, that package, and what this package can do. You know, and you, as you see, you're doing a distance learning course. Like, is there a need for a teacher anymore? Just stick it all on the web, you know. And that brings me full circle, because I have actually just finished being a student on an online course run halfway across the world in America.
Yeah, how was that?
How was that? Would I have ever envisaged me doing something like that? No, I did never envisage it. I was actually apprehensive about it. But what I learnt was that if you fully engage in it, and as in fully engage in the Facebook groups and actually put yourself out there and speak to people, you get back what you put in. Yeah, so for a long time I sat back and thought, I'm not doing this, I ain't going on no Facebook group, I'm not telling them my thoughts and my feelings, it's nothing to do with them. But to, gradually, as I embraced it and went on it and discussed my thoughts and feelings, I made some really strong, powerful connections with people who I would never, ever normally meet in my real life. But they are there, they're across the other side of the world, and they're very supportive, and that has changed my life. Doing that course has changed my life because it's now my new career.
Okay.
So I have to say, yes, technology in the classroom is wonderful.
So just to quickly go back and kind of wrap up what you were saying, in terms of the impact, you're saying that basically these tools at first seem really good, but they might throw up some issues that you hadn't thought about before. Perhaps just being able to manage and control them, that requires extra time. And then perhaps people forget that there's a human behind whatever automation that's been prepared. And I think, you were saying that perhaps it creates some distance between the teacher and the learner. All of this kind of automation and technology, it could create distance. However, in your example of your latest online course, you did actually feel closer with the students, or with your fellow students, when you made the effort to engage, when you were motivated enough, or when you motivated yourself enough to engage. And perhaps on the flip side, if you don't engage, and as you say, if you don't put yourself forward, then you won't enjoy it, you won't learn as much, and it will have no value. Some people might say that with the face-to-face classroom, you kind of you might oblige people to interact a bit more, because the teacher is there like looking at you and just waiting for you to say something. Whereas if you are at a distance, maybe it's easy not to turn up. If you turn up, maybe it's easy not to say anything and not to contribute. And finally, I guess you were talking about the spontaneous collaboration and sharing of information between students was the most valuable experience of your online course. Yeah,
definitely. And the icing on the cake was our graduation, and the fact that the culmination of the course was in a in-life experience of actually meeting our course trainer, lecturer, whatever you want to call him, in person, and be with my fellow learners actually in real life at an event. That was, for me, the icing on the cake, because whereas you talk to people over the internet, all I can say is the atmosphere in the room on those 3 days where we met is like nothing I've experienced in my whole life. It was very deep, very powerful, meeting and talking with people who you just met online prior to that, but actually being there physically and in person, you know, the chemistry, everything
So
was fantastic.
it sounds like the kind of ideal recipe would be part online and part offline, or part face to face.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well,
Definitely, because I like to be, when I'm teaching, I like to be with the students, with the learners. I like to physically be with them, but I do see and value distance learning because of the way that we live, you know, and the fact that we can do it this way, the fact that we can speak to each other like we're speaking now, halfway across the world through an object, you know, whilst the technology is there and it can do it, well, let's embrace it.
Okay, well, thank you. We're going to finish on a positive note. Thanks, Mum. That's the end of the interview.
Yeah, thank you, Pearl. Oh.